Guys, keep close eye to Hugo Ekitike, because I told you last week, and many said, Fabrizio, are you crazy? Why? They just signed Elanga, so why one more expensive player up front? But Newcastle are working on the deal to sign Hugo Ekitike from Eintracht Frankfurt. I told you last week, and I maintain my position. Newcastle are on it. Newcastle want Ekitike. They wanted João Pedro before he decided to go to Chelsea, so they're still looking to add one more offensive player up front.
What's going on, guys? It's Adam P. Once again, Newcastle United upload. I wasn't expecting to make 2 videos today, but the good news just continues to come out. Now, it has been stated just before breaking news, an exclusive article from Fabrizio Romano has claimed that Newcastle has launched their first official bid to bring in Hugo Ekitike this summer. We can talk about links all we want. We could talk about players and what Newcastle plans on doing this summer. But I'm always someone personally who believes in action speaking louder than words, and the official bid, clear intent that Newcastle wants Hugo Ekitike this summer. And when you read the likes of Athletic this morning, they've claimed that no one in terms of Newcastle's big players will be going this summer. Gordon staying, Isak staying, Tonali staying, Bruno staying, Livramento staying. Your top high value players are going nowhere this summer, which means that if Newcastle can land the sign of Hugo Ekitike, this would be a player that will play alongside Alexander Isak. My word, in terms of the attack next season, that's as good as it gets in my opinion. When you look at attacks in the Premier League, when you look at attacks across Europe, of course, Champions League football, I think this is one of the best attacks. And when you talk about a high-pressing team like PSG yesterday, I know they lost to Chelsea, but Newcastle, if they're able to even play with intensity like that, which we certainly can do, we can beat anyone doing that. We honestly can. And the signing of Ekitike is huge. I think it answers a lot of questions. I know for you guys watching it, will probably dish out a lot of questions as well. But for me, I'm a massive fan of this deal and we'll explain why shortly. Of course, quickly from me, if you guys enjoy the content, make sure you get down there, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button you enjoy. Of course, for any future transfer news, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss the bell notifications for when that news comes out. It's going to be fairly busy on the channel. Of course, we are heading out to Asia next week. We're in Scotland this weekend. So please do subscribe if you enjoy the content. Smash the like button. Highly appreciate it. But back on topic with Hugo Ekitike now. I think the first question, when you even heard about any links surrounding Ekitike itself, well, if he comes in, what happens to Isak? What would we do on our team? Now, Ekitike and Isak can both play out on the left. And of course, the other one will play up front. So you either have a case where one goes on the left, then of course, then you got the issue of what happens to Gordon, what happens to Barnes. And of course, essentially, you then got one player in there. Now, in my opinion, I think Hugo Ekitike is, as much as I don't want to be negative, I think he is an emergency signing if Isak was to go next summer. The point of it being is that Newcastle is setting everything into place for a worst case scenario next summer. Now, it's early to call. I think Newcastle, to be honest, with players like Isak, I think you need Champions League football every single season. And this season, of course, finishing in the top 5 again with playing Champions League football, that's the big question Newcastle now has, because of course, we can do it fine without Champions League football, but having those additional games, Newcastle needs to be able to, on a season-upon-season basis, be able to achieve that. This sign is a huge intent. There's a lot of intent behind this. I think in terms of ambition, Newcastle's going to go for it next season. It's almost kind of like, let's go for it now, lads. Let's just see what happens. Let's go out there. Let's try and win the competition. I think, honestly, the team we have now, let's say Scalvani comes in, Trafford comes in, maybe a centre midfielder comes in as well. I believe Newcastle's team can compete in the Champions League. And while, of course, I would never, ever go as far to say that Newcastle could outright win the competition, but that team has a legitimate possibility of challenging. I think it does. I think the team is very good. I think when you look at attacks in Europe, I think Newcastle is up there. We talk about Isak potentially at Liverpool. Ekitike would start for Liverpool, in my opinion. I really fancy him as a player. I think he's top quality, I think, for what he can offer to Newcastle's team. Young, explosive, and he's someone where I know a few years ago, and I'm going to be honest, when we first heard the links a few years ago, it didn't happen at the time. I think especially in the agent point of view, agent clearly used Newcastle, wasn't the best for Newcastle, didn't treat us a whole amount of respect. But to be honest, I'm not going to judge it personally on Ekitike. I think it's more on the agent side of things. At this time, it's smoother getting this deal in. I like the look of it. Now, of course, going away from the sign itself, there's been a lot of rumours and links in social media today now there has been claims that we've had individuals in Newcastle speaking about the transfer, and then to contradict that, of course, Newcastle's squad is now out in Austria for a week of warm weather training, and even then, there's flights linked to Frankfurt going on Austrian location that's about 30 minutes away from where Newcastle were training. So it does seem to be a deal that's legitimately active. I think the Fabrizio Romano exclusive, the fact that there's an official bid launch in there, I'll love to hear from the local journalists. I'll love to hear what Keith Downey thinks, Craig Hope thinks. But ultimately, this is a sign Newcastle is actually going for. We talk about the rumours, we talk about the speculation on social media, but with intent, the fact there's a bid in there, Newcastle is going for this deal. They clearly want this deal. João Pedro, of course, we had a £50 million bid rejected for him. The fact that Ekitike maybe could land between 60 to 70 million is not too much of a price valuation. And again, I think it answers the obvious question. Isak, there's going to be a lot of question marks around him next summer. This is the blow that will be dampened if Isak goes. This player will be the future of Newcastle if Isak decides to go next summer. And I think as much as you don't want to have that question, just having everything ready for that worst case scenario is exactly what Newcastle should be doing. And this season is your opportunity to make sure they're not let these players go by achieving something, by again getting Champions League football. If you can do that season upon season, you're going to keep your players. And that's exactly what Newcastle needs to do now. I can't wait to see what we do in this window. The fact that we're going in form, I think it's still early to see whether we're getting, but I'm confident we're going to have a very strong window. I think Newcastle have been waiting a little while now. The fact that we've got to go in like this. Trafford, of course, talk about Scalvani, we talked about already, but this is the one. I really feel like this is the one that's going to make a massive difference for us. I think it's huge. Alanga I was happy with. This, I think, is almost a different level. I think Ekitike is, you're talking one of the highest potential strikers in world football. He's one of the highest valued strikers in world football, and he's someone where you're talking over 20 goal contributions last season for Frankfurt. Isak and Ekitike last season, 49 goals and 18 assists combined. You talk about Shearer and Les Ferdinand. This pairing will do some work as well. So we'll see what happens. Again, for now, I just want to tell you the news. Just want to get through it all. Huge though. Huge claim by Romano that Newcastle has went in for Ekitike. I think this could be potentially a quick deal if Newcastle is wanting to get this done, especially for a player of his demand. If you want to get him in, has to be done as soon as possible. So this one could potentially spice up a lot of the next few days. I fully expect it to do so. So walking away from this video, let me know your opinions down below. I don't want to make this video too long because I'm aware I've already uploaded today and we've already talked about Trafford today and the altercation with Jason Tyndall and Sunderland fans. So again, make sure you watch that video once you're done here. But massive. All of you weren't fully convinced Newcastle would do it, but they're going for it. They are giving it a go, and we'll see whether this deal is pulled off in the end. As big as it gets, though, huge statement. So let's see what happens. Take care, guys. Appreciate you watching, and we will see you all in the next one.